DND number 13, For Unto Us, in Jesus' name, Chapter 2. It is December 6th, 4:20 p.m., Friday, early evening, Pine Forest Country Inn, Pine Forest, Georgia. Jody Apple sat on the bed and looked around the room. It looked like my internet went out for a second. I'll try again. Jody Apple sat on the bed and looked around the room while she waited for Hannah to shower. She'd bought a new comforter while they were out buying some clothes for the sweet girl. Jody made up the bed and looked around to see what else she might need to get. There was already a small desk with a lamp, and she was sure she'd need a computer once she got settled in. The dresser was large, and Jody was thinking she would fill it up with whatever Hannah wanted. The outfits they just bought included 3 pairs of jeans, cute little shirts and sweaters, pajamas, shoes, socks, and underwear, and a few beginner bras. Also, a coat, a couple of cute dresses to wear to church, some dress shoes and boots, and a casual jacket. They'd gone shopping as soon as they left the hospital. Jody had watched Hannah's eyes get big as they'd piled more and more things. After the shopping trip, they'd eaten lunch together, just the two of them, as Jody attempted to get to know Hannah. She was a sweet girl. She was not standoffish or closed off like Jody expected her to be after the trauma she'd been through. She was simply a little shy, very quiet, and Jody knew that she'd learned that because she'd quietly endured a lot of things and may not know how to act around people. Jody and John had called Grandmaster Kino and spoken to him about the best way to help Hannah to heal emotionally. And after a long talk, Grandmaster Kino assured them that their natural instincts would be best, to shower her with love, to pray over her, and to help her pray. He'd shared with them what Taylor had learned, that Hannah had begun to pray to ask God to help her out of her situation, and she believes that he actually did hear her prayers. So that was huge. Jody knew that with God, all things are possible, and Hannah would heal. Jody looked up as she heard the water turn off. She prayed silently while she waited another 10 minutes before the girl came out of the bathroom, a thick terry cloth robe tied snug at her tiny waist. Jody smiled. "Hey, Hannah, I bet you feel a lot better." Hannah merely nodded. "Come sit down here at the vanity and I'll comb out your hair," Jody said, patting the small, round, white velvet seat. Hannah did as she was told and sat looking in the mirror at herself as Miss Jody gently combed the tangles out of her hair. Jody smiled into the mirror at her. "I didn't realize your hair was this long." Hannah frowned as she tried to see, so Jody divided her long, dark blonde hair in half in the back and pulled the 2 parts in front over her shoulders. And Jody could see the surprised look on Hannah's face as well. Her hair had been so dirty and so tangled that she didn't even know it was to the middle of her back. Jody had given her a quick tutorial about using the shampoo and the conditioner, and it appeared she did a good job. Jody fingered the ends of her hair. "It is a little uneven here on the ends, but I can fix that up real quick if you'd like. We can trim just a tiny bit, and it will look so much healthier. Would you like for me to do that?" Hannah sighed. "Will it look like yours?" Jody smiled. "Well, it won't be dark like mine, of course, but yes, it's about the same length, and we both have very straight hair." "My mother's hair was dark like yours," Hannah said softly. Jody drew a deep breath. Grandmaster Kino had told her to let Hannah talk as much as she wants about her past, to encourage it, so Jody smiled. "I saw some pictures. She was very pretty." Hannah nodded. "But she was mean. She was always so mad at everyone." "Even at you?" Jody asked. Hannah nodded. "She'd be real mean and yell at me, but then later she'd say she was sorry." "And what did you say when she said she was sorry?" Hannah shrugged. I don't really remember. I think I said, 'It's okay.' I didn't want her to feel bad." "Oh, Hannah, that is so sweet. You were willing to forgive her. That's exactly what Jesus would want you to do. Do you know about Jesus?" "Well, I know he was born on Christmas, and people say he is the Son of God and that he is God, but that's all I really know." "Well, he must know you because you naturally knew to forgive your mother." Jody paused a moment. "Hannah, you know your mother was sick, right? Hannah nodded her head. Yeah, she got sick when she didn't get her pills. Well, I mean, she was sick because she got addicted to the pills. Do you know what that means? Hannah nodded her head. Yeah, it's when people have to have drugs and cigarettes, and if they don't get them, they feel real bad, and they go crazy if they don't have them. Right. Drugs and pills and cigarettes and alcohol and other things too. So once a person becomes addicted, it's very hard for that person to stop using those things. It's like they have to have those things or they think they will die. It's weird, but it's like they crave the very things that are making them so sick. Your mom needed help, and she didn't know how to get the help she needed. She said Carl was going to help her. Well, Carl lied to her. He used your mom. Hannah looked down. Do you think my mom was already dead when Carl picked her up and carried her away? Jody nodded. Well, you said her eyes were open and she was staring up into the sky. That means that she probably died from a brain injury the second he punched her. And that means she was already gone, with Jesus, out of her body. So she didn't know what he did after that. So he didn't, bury her alive, Hannah mumbled. No, sweetie, she was gone. She didn't suffer anymore, and her addiction at the physical level was gone too. Hannah nodded. Sweetie, I believe you'll see your mom again one day. When we die, we don't just end. Our spirit leaves our body and continues on. Hannah nodded. That's what my friend always said. What friend? A friend I had back a long time ago when I was little. She told me God was real, and she's why I tried to pray to God and ask him to help me. You know, sweetie, it wasn't just a coincidence that Taylor Kino saw you yesterday. God made that happen. Taylor is very close to Jesus. Every day she asks God to tell her who he wants her to help. And yesterday, God directed Taylor to you. I wish Taylor didn't have to leave tomorrow. I know. But from now on, you two are going to be really good friends. Taylor said she would get me a phone. No, Taylor said you would get me a phone, and we would do video calls every day if I wanted. Oh, absolutely. We'll make that happen. Mrs. Kino said that she really loves you and that you really wanted to take good care of me. Jody smiled. Mrs. Kino was right. Why? Why do I want to take care of you? Yes. Because God sent you to me. Because you and me are special. How are we special? Jody sighed. She thought it would be a long time before she shared with Hannah what she was about to share with her. But maybe this was what she was supposed to do. Grandmaster Kino told her it might be a good idea to solidify the relationship now by telling her how and why they were similar. No one knew what Jody was about to tell Hannah, only her husband John and Grandmaster Kino, not even her own son, nor her best friends in the world, Lisa Stewart and Lizzie Tanner. I want to tell you, Hannah. I'm just not sure if I should, but maybe I should, so that you can know why you staying with me will be good for you. It'll be good for you because you'll know that I understand exactly what you've been through. She smiled sadly. I'll tell you what. Let's pick out an outfit and you get dressed and we'll trim your hair and I'll blow it dry for you. And then we'll sit here and have a talk and I'll tell you everything. I guess you're not too young to know because I was even younger than you when I was taken from my family. Hannah's eyes opened wide and Jody nodded. How about some jeans and boots and that pretty pink sweater with the roses on it? New scene. It is still December 6th. It's 1:20 p.m. Friday afternoon at the Kino Estate, Crystal Cove, California. Eric turned from the kitchen sink at the sound of little feet coming down the stairs. He waited for the few seconds it took for them to burst into the kitchen. Daddy, Noah and Abe called at the same time. Eric smiled and knelt down to let the children run into his arms. There's my boys, he said softly. He squeezed them and set them back so he could look into their big brown eyes. Who wants to tell me why you're down here and not up with the others taking a nap? 'Cause Mommy said if we can't stop wiggling around, we had to go downstairs and tell you, and you would find something for us to do, Noah blurted out in his adorable child accent. I see. Is everyone else taking their nap? Yes, sir, Abe said, but Angelina is only pretending. Eric chuckled. And just how do you know that? Because I saw her open her eyes and then close them really fast, like this, he said as he demonstrated. Eric nodded. The three of them turned as Melody and Jordan both came into the kitchen wearing their martial arts uniforms. What have we here? Melody asked. I bet someone was wiggling around and not taking their nap. Noah smiled. Yep, it was me, he said proudly. And me, Abe said. Eric rose. Well, I was about to give these young ladies a martial arts lesson. You can sit quietly and watch and learn. Or you can go back upstairs and take your nap. Can we have a cookie? Noah asked. Eric shook his head. Absolutely not, he said firmly, knowing that giving them a reward for not taking their nap would only reinforce the behavior. They both made a face, making Jordan giggle. Eric glanced at the beautiful young lady. Are you two ready? They both bowed. Yes, sir. Grab a hand and let's head downstairs. They headed down to what most people call the weapons room because it was lined with all manner of martial arts weaponry. They stood in the middle of the floor behind Grandmaster Kino. Boys, have a seat on the floor in front of the mirror right there, their father said softly, and see if you can find two things that you remember the name of. They both said a cute little yes, sir, and went to sit, easily folding themselves into the full lotus position. Eric then bowed to his two female students. Let us begin, he said firmly, as they began a series of stretches. Almost an hour later, after stretches and forms and conditioning and strength drills, Eric worked on different flow of combat techniques. He glanced over at the boys who were leaning against each other, sound asleep. He smiled, his heart filled with love for the children. They were his. He had to keep reminding himself that these small, sweet spirits were his and Shelley's, and they were trusting them to take care of them and nurture them and teach them. But it was even more than that. They were special. They came into the world in a strange way. An evil person brought them into the world, but God allowed it because these 5 new children had a special calling. It was now up to Eric to hone them and to teach them and to help them find that calling. He loved them every bit as much as he did his own children, Ricky, Bree, Mark, Joey, and Jeffy. Not his own, but his original. He just didn't know them as well. He'd been working on getting to know just who these adorable spirits were, and it was nothing but pure pleasure every single day, every minute spent with them. He glanced in the mirror at the 2 young ladies as they worked against each other, and he nodded his head. That was good, Melody, but if you don't plant the base foot firmly, she'll knock you off balance. She's taller than you, so you have to compensate. And stronger, Melody said as she grunted with exertion. We all have our weaknesses and strengths, Eric said softly. Eric, Jordan, and Melody looked up as the door opened and in stepped Manny and Nate and Angelina in their little martial arts uniforms, with Shelley behind, holding the uniforms for Noah and Abe. Eric smiled. Shelley girl, he bowed. She returned the gesture. Grandmaster Kino, she whispered. Noah and Abe woke at the voice of their mother. Is it our turn now? Abe asked sleepily. Almost, Shelley said. You have to go use the bathroom and get into your uniforms. Let's go, she said. They rose up and followed her dutifully. Eric had Jordan and Melody line up. You did well, ladies. You're both moving right along, and I'm pleased with your progress. It appears young Eric and Logan are also doing their jobs well in teaching you. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir, Jordan said. It's easy to do that with 2 of the hottest guys on the planet teaching us. Or, 3, including you. Melody giggled at Jordan using those words to describe Grandmaster Kino's grandsons to him, and then adding him to the description. Grandmaster Kino also chuckled. That's very kind of you, Jordan. He smiled at the girls. Are you looking forward to the big party tonight? Yes, sir, they said in unison as they grabbed up their water bottles and towels and dried their faces. I understand everyone is meeting the limo here? Yes, sir. JoJo's date will be here by 5, and Miss Shelley is going to help us get ready. He nodded. It sounds like a fun time. But listen, girls, don't leave Eric's and Logan's sides tonight. And don't drink anything given to you by anyone except your dates. Yes, sir. What if we have to use the restroom? Jordan asked. Well, then go together and have one of the guys wait for you. They nodded. Eric went on. Even though the party is at Rico's club, it will be different from when you went there before. When you were there before, it was merely a restaurant lounge. Tonight, it will be very crowded, almost no tables, very loud music, flashing lights, a lot of press and paparazzi. He shook his head. Be careful. They both nodded again. New scene. It is still December 6th. It is 5 p.m. Friday evening. Pine Forest Country Inn, Pine Forest, Georgia. Jody smiled as she watched Hannah turn from side to side in front of the full-length mirror on the closet door. Hannah looked up into Jody's eyes and offered a small smile. Do you like what you see, Hannah? The girl nodded. I don't look like me. Jody sighed. Yes, you do. You just didn't know that this is how you look when you're clean and in some clothes that fit you properly. I almost look pretty, Hannah said in a whisper, almost as if she were talking to herself. That's because you are pretty. You're actually very pretty, beautiful. I want you to see that, sweetie. Look in the mirror. Look at the shape of your face, a perfect oval. Maybe a little thin, but some decent food will fix that right up. And look at your hair now that it's clean and trimmed up. It's so pretty. Hannah peered in the mirror. Her hair hung down straight and soft-looking. It was simply parted in the middle and hung down over her shoulders. Miss Jody had trimmed off the raggedy ends and had trimmed a few wisps of soft bangs around her eyes, and Hannah blinked at the eyes staring back at her, trying to get used to her own image. And you have beautiful big brown eyes and an adorable little turned-up nose. Hannah smiled. And look at that, Jody said brightly. What? You just smiled. And, sweetie, I think that was the prettiest thing I've ever seen. Hannah rolled her eyes, making Jody giggle. Jody took out her phone and snapped off a few pics. I want to commemorate this moment, Hannah, where you began to discover your self-worth. She glanced at the time on her phone. Well, I promised to tell you a story. She patted the bed. Come sit down. Hannah sat on the bed, and Jody rose and went to grab the wing-back chair by the window and drug it over to sit right in front of Hannah. She sat down and gazed into the child's eyes. So, Hannah, I told you that I was younger than you when I was taken from my home. You're 13. I was 11. Hannah's eyes opened wide. Now, actually, you were younger than I was because when your mom took you from your father, you were only 9. But at least you had your mom until you were 12. Hannah nodded. The story I'm about to tell you, Hannah, no one knows this about me except 2 people, my husband, John, and Grandmaster Kino. And I know you don't know Grandmaster Kino, but you will eventually meet him. He's Taylor's grandfather, and he is the kindest, most noble man you'll ever meet. My own son, Jake, whom I love with every fiber of my being, he doesn't even know the story I'm about to tell you. Oh, then why would you tell me? Hannah asked. Jody nodded. Because God is putting it on my heart that me telling you this story will go a long way to helping you to heal. And I think he's also telling me that it's time I shared my story with not only you, but with Jake and with my friends. But I'm telling you first because I care about you, Hannah, and I want you to heal, and I want you to feel like there's someone right here in front of you that truly knows and understands what you've been through and what you will continue to go through as you begin to heal from the trauma. Hannah didn't say anything. She just blinked as she looked up at the pretty lady's eyes. Jody drew a deep breath. I wasn't born in the United States. I was born in Korea, in South Korea. My mother was Korean. My father was Chinese. And we were very poor. My father was a fisherman. I don't remember him too well. He wasn't very nice. He drank a lot, and he gambled a lot. And sometimes he gambled away all of our money, and my mom would have to go ask people for food so that she could feed me. When I turned 11 years old, my father got into trouble because of his gambling, and one night he came to my mat where I was sleeping and woke me up and told me to get dressed. He took me out. It was winter. It was very cold. He took me down to the docks, and he sold me to another Chinese man. Really, before I ever knew, and definitely before I even understood what was happening, I was in a shipping container with many other children and some women. Mostly everyone was female, but there were a few boys too. And one of the older girls told me that we were loaded onto a ship and we were going to a new country where it's warm and where we won't be hungry anymore and where the people are kind. She sighed. I believed her, but she didn't know any better than I did. It was what she'd been told. Jody paused for a few seconds and then went on. We were on the ship for weeks. The container where we stayed smelled so bad because there was only buckets to use the bathroom. There was only bread to eat and some water to drink. At least 10 girls died before we ever got to the new country, and that new country was Mexico. I didn't know that at the time, but I learned it later. We were so happy to finally be off the ship and out of the shipping container. We thought finally there would be relief, but it only got worse from there. We were loaded onto a truck. I learned later that we were brought across the border into the United States and to a place in the slums of Los Angeles. Not all of us. Some were delivered to some big fancy homes. The boys were special. They got fed and cleaned up, and I thought they were lucky, but that turned out to be a lie. They maybe even had it worse. At the place where we were taken, we were fed and bathed and initiated into what we were there to do, and that was to allow men to have sex with us. We were beaten and starved and tortured and whipped with belts until we agreed to do what we were told to do. And the worst torture was we were made to do what we were told to do, or the babies that some of the girls had would be killed. And there were a lot of babies. By the time I was your age, I was servicing about 10 to 15 men a day. I was like in a zone, I guess you could say. I wanted to die. I got really sick, and I thought, finally, I'm going to get out of this life. But that's not what happened. One night, there was a police raid. There had been police raids before, and we were always told to hide or run because the police were very bad, and they would tear off your eyelids and break your arms and legs. I hid, but I was watching the police as they came searching for us in the rooms. We hid in a basement floor, and I saw one man. He didn't look mean. He was talking to another man. He had tears in his eyes. I realized he was crying over what was happening to us girls. I tried to go to him, but the other girls held me back. But I screamed and fought, and that got their attention, and the police found the door and pulled it open. And I looked up at that man. It was the one who'd been crying. He smiled at me and reached out to me. I grabbed onto his hand and allowed him to pull me up, and I held onto his arm and would not let him go. Other police came down into the room and pulled about 40 girls out of that hole, but I still wouldn't let the one man go. He tried to hand me to a lady and told me she would take care of me, but I didn't trust anyone else, and I held on to the man and begged him to let me stay with him. Jody stopped and wiped tears from her eyes and then reached over and wiped the tears from Hannah's eyes, too. She smiled and shrugged. There's a lot more to the story, but that man and his wife eventually ended up adopting me. I had to have lots of counseling. It wasn't easy at first, learning to trust people, learning to trust men, but that man, his name was Quentin Hall, and he became my father. And his wife, Margaret Hall, became my mother. And I began to heal, and I started school. Most people were very kind, but I was made fun of because I was very small for my age because of lack of nutrition. She smiled. And then I met John Apple. He was 2 years older than me. He stood up for me at school. He took me under his wing. He was so cute, so strong, and very popular. He was good friends with a guy named Ricky Kino, and they went to martial arts classes at Kino Martial Arts and were taught by Grandmaster Kino. And I started going too. I was learning so much. I was healing, and most of that had to do with John and Ricky teaching me about God. And God, He answered my prayers and showed me that He is real. This was the most healing part of everything. He took away my pain, my bad memories, my suffering, and He made me strong. And oh, Hannah, I am so strong. Eventually, John and I fell in love, and we got married, and John joined the military, but I waited for him to come home to me. We wanted to have children, but I was unable. I had damage to my uterus and cervix because of what the men did to me when I was being trafficked. But then John and I decided to come to Georgia to help run this inn, and just before we got here, a miracle happened. God answered my prayers. I got pregnant. And our little Jacob was such a blessing for us, and as the doctors told me time and again, such a miracle. I was never able to have another child, though we tried, and we were desperate to have one. Still, God told us to stay strong and to stay in service to His other children, and He will bless us. And He has, Hannah. He's blessed us with so much, and now He's blessed us with the opportunity to help you. And we want to help you, Hannah. We know, because of what I've been through, that we are the perfect people to help you. So, sweetie, if you ever want to talk about it, if you just want to get mad or be sad or cry over what's happened, you can come to me and we'll do just that. And then it'll get better, and it will eventually go away, and you'll be happy. Hannah had tears on her cheeks. I'm sorry, Miss Jody, for what happened to you. Oh, it's okay, sweetie, really. Because of what I went through, I was made so strong. It made me so that I can help others with all of their problems, and that brings me so much happiness. And you, Hannah, are going to be even stronger than me. She held out her hands to the girl whose tears continued to flow. Oh, honey, come here, Jody said. Hannah rose off the bed and rotated to sit on Jody's lap. She leaned her head against Jody's chest and she cried. And Jody wrapped her arms around the fragile shoulders of the girl and held her tight and let her own tears come. And they cried together for several minutes. And finally they quieted, and Jody stroked Hannah's head, giving comfort and human touch. She knew that no one had held this child, probably since she'd been very young. She held her now and stroked her and kissed her cheek. Everything is going to be okay, my sweet Hannah girl, Jody murmured. They sat in silence, but both looked up when the door opened. John Apple smiled at the sight. Well, he said softly, I think that might be the prettiest thing I've seen all day. 2 beautiful girls all cuddled up. Hannah and Jody sat up. Hey, John, Jody said quietly. We just had a long talk, and now little Miss Hannah knows my secret. Ah, I see, John said. I guess that makes her very special. It does indeed, Jody replied. Both Hannah and Jody unwrapped themselves from each other and stood. John smiled. Wow, you ladies are 2 of the prettiest girls I've ever seen. Hannah, I love those boots. She smiled. Thank you. You're welcome, he said smoothly. So I just came to get you, Hannah, because Daisy Tanner, who was one of Gabe's sisters, is going down to the Stewart barn real quick to feed the puppies before dinner, and she was wondering if you'd like to come and see them. Puppies? Hannah said. Yes, I would love to see puppies. John smiled. Her soul hadn't died yet. Not like his Jody's had when he'd first met her. Fantastic, he said softly. Jody stood. Let's get your jacket. She opened the closet and took out the blue quilted jacket with a hood that was lined in white faux fur and helped Hannah put it on. Jody smiled at her. You look so cute. John held out his hand. Come on then, and I'll introduce you to Daisy. Jody chewed on her lip, wondering if it was too soon for Hannah to trust a man, But to her relief, Hannah smiled and placed her hand in John's. The two walked out of Hannah's new bedroom, down the back hall, and came out at the stairs. They turned left and went into the lobby, and Hannah looked up at the prettiest girl she'd ever seen. She had almost white blonde hair and big blue eyes, and it seemed there was a light all around her. She smiled at Hannah, and it almost made Hannah feel like she needed to fall down. "Daisy," John said in his deep voice, "this is Hannah." Daisy grinned and held out her hand. "Hannah, it's so nice to meet you." Hannah only nodded her head. Daisy placed her hands on Hannah's shoulders. Excuse me. "So, would you like to walk with me down to the steward's barn and see the puppies?" Hannah nodded her head. "How many are there?" "There are 9, Daisy said excitedly. John glanced at the time. "Daisy, it's getting late. Instead of walking, take the golf cart. It's right out front." "Thanks, Uncle John," Daisy replied with a smile. She nodded at Hannah. "Let's go. I love driving the golf cart." They headed out the door and down the steps of the inn and climbed into the cart. As they pulled toward the front gate of the inn, Daisy pointed to the left, to a wide sidewalk that was currently lined with pine garland, red bows, and twinkling white lights. "That walk right there leads to the cottages and to a side gate that opens to my house. Well, I mean my parents' house." Hannah looked in the direction the sidewalk went, but it disappeared around a curve, and she looked back at Daisy. "And you're Gabe's sister, right?" Daisy nodded and smiled. "Yes, Gabe has 7 sisters and 1 brother." "Really?" Daisy nodded. "Really? 5 of us are grown, and the others are little. Iris turns 3 this coming week, and I hope you'll come to the birthday party. And then the twins, little Gentian and Isaiah, were just born a little over a week ago." "Oh, wow. Would you like to meet them?" "Now?" "No, but by the time we get back, they'll be at the inn because we're having a goodbye dinner for the Kinos." Hannah smiled. Daisy headed out the front gate of the inn and turned right. She drove a half-mile to where the dirt road ended at a dirt driveway. Daisy pointed to the paved road on the right. "That road leads into town," she said, as she pulled in through an open gate. She pointed up to a large brick house up on a hill to the right. "That is the elder Stewart's home. They actually own the ranch here, along with their eldest son, whom I call Uncle Chaz, though he isn't my real uncle." She drove past the home and went through a wooded area and pointed to their left. "That big log home over there is Uncle Chaz and Aunt Lisa's house. They have 6 kids, and the 2 youngest are twins, and they were born a month ago." "Wow, lots of babies." Daisy nodded with a smile. "Isn't it wonderful?" Hannah nodded. Daisy turned right through a split-rail gate and headed down a long gravel path to a large red building. "And this is the barn." She pulled up right next to the big doors, and Hannah's eyes opened wide. There's a giant horse right there," she said, pointing to where Santana stood near the side of the barn. Daisy nodded. "Yeah, that's Santana. It's Jake's horse." "Jake? Miss Jody and Mr. John's Jake?" "Yes. He's not home right now. He's in the military, and he's in Afghanistan. And someone must have taken Santana out for some exercise." "But he's not even tied up," Hannah said. "Oh, Santana is well trained. He won't run off." "Is he nice?" "Yeah, he's nice. He just looks big and scary. Come on, let's go in." They entered through the side door and headed toward the back of the barn. Charlie Stewart turned as he finished spreading a fresh layer of hay over the floor in the back corner. Georgia immediately headed to Daisy, her tail wagging. Hannah's eyes opened wide. "Don't be afraid of her," Daisy said. "She just wants to smell you and make sure you're not here to hurt her puppies." Hannah Benton offered her hand to Georgia to smell. The large dog smelled her hand briefly and then lowered her head to put Hannah's hand on top of it. Daisy laughed. "Well, that didn't take long. You passed the test already. Now she just wants you to pet her." Hannah giggled and rubbed her hand over George's head and down her neck. "Oh, you're a sweet dog, aren't you?" Hannah whispered. Charlie came forward. As he approached, Hannah stopped petting Georgia and stared up at the tall boy. Charlie smiled. "Hey, Daisy," he said, his voice already deep. "Hey, Charlie. I thought I told you that I'd come down and feed Georgia this evening." He nodded. Yep, you did. But Lena asked me to take Santana out for some exercise since she was busy helping out at the inn, and I remembered that I needed to clean up George's area here and put down some fresh hay so that you wouldn't have to do it. Daisy smiled. You're a good kid, Charlie. He shrugged with a smile. I try. He looked at Hannah. She looked a lot different than she did the day before. She was clean. Her hair was longer and clean and brushed. Her face was clean. The dark circles that had been under her eyes were gone. He smiled. Hi, Hannah. I'm Charlie. You know me? She asked. I know about you. I was at the courthouse yesterday, and I saw what was going on. She looked down. So all the puppies are in that big box over there. You want to help me put them back in their little area? I moved them out of the way so I could clean up and put down fresh hay. He didn't wait for an answer, but just motioned for her to follow him to a big cardboard box on the floor. Daisy and Hannah followed. Hannah dropped to her knees beside the box. Oh, my goodness, look at all of them. Oh, they're just so cute, she said softly. She reached in and lifted one of the black puppies and held it up to look into its face. Oh, hello there, she said, then leaned forward and nestled her nose against the puppy's sweet face. Daisy and Charlie watched her, glad to see her come alive. Animals had a way of doing that, of healing hearts. Charlie reached down and picked up a puppy, carried it to the designated area, and placed it gently down. There you go, buddy, he said. Immediately, Georgia went back to the area to sniff at her puppy. Their eyes are closed, Hannah said. Charlie nodded. Yeah, they're only like a week old. Probably be another week before their eyes open. Hannah took the puppy in her arms and moved to put it in the little enclosure. She placed it close to Georgia, and Charlie carried a few more, and Hannah carried one at a time, and a minute later, Georgia was lying on her side, nursing her 9 little ones. Hannah sat there watching. Daisy filled George's food bowl and added more water to the large water bowl. Charlie stood back. Well, I got to put Santana up. Daisy smiled. Well, thanks for helping out. Charlie nodded. Hey, Hannah, so do you like horses? She looked up, her eyes wide. I don't know. Ever been on one? She shook her head. Well, maybe one day I'll take you for a ride. What do you think? She blinked up at him. He smiled. We'll go really slow. She shrugged. Daisy smiled. Hannah, did you know Charlie is about your age? She looked up. Really? Charlie nodded. Yeah, I'm 14, but I'll be 15 in a few months. Oh, Hannah muttered. How old are you? Charlie asked, even though he already knew the answer. 13, Hannah muttered. Cool. When's your birthday? September 18th. Oh, so we're close to the same age. I'm about a year and a half older. Hannah nodded. Charlie shifted his feet. So I guess I got to get going. See y'all at dinner. Bye, Charlie, Daisy called as he made his way out of the barn. Well, I guess we'll head back to the inn. You can meet my baby brother and sisters, and Gabe and Taylor should be there by now. Hannah smiled. New scene. It is still December 6th. It is 5 p.m. Friday evening at the Kino Estate, Crystal Cove, California. JoJo Adams drove through the security gate and gave a friendly smile and waved to the agent. Ella Penn, the girl in the passenger seat, turned to look at him, a confused look on her face. Did you just wave to that guy at the gate? He smiled at her. Yes. Do you know him? Well, not personally. Does he know you or know of you? Probably. I don't understand what you're getting at. Oh, well, I just thought you're awfully friendly to the help. His brow furrowed. The help? I mean, that guy's being paid to man that gate, right? Yes, he's a security agent, so he's being paid. My dad says they need to understand their place. They are not our friends, so you don't have to take time to be so friendly, but you do. Okay, well, yes, he's a paid agent, but I have an immense amount of respect for any Ameritech agent, and he's also a human being, and his place is right by my side. Oh, yes, of course. I just find that interesting. In a good way or in a bad way? He asked as he pulled to the right instead of circling around to the front of the house. She shrugged. In an interesting way. He didn't press it any further because they didn't have time to get into a discussion. He parked his car over on the right side of the second garage and went around to open her door for her. She waited patiently. He offered his left hand and gently pulled her out of the car. He then reached into the back seat and pulled out her dress bag and a small suitcase. "This way," he said, walking slightly in front of her. "Well, why didn't we park in front of the house instead of having to walk from way over here?" she asked. He smiled. "Well, the limo will be arriving soon, and I didn't want him to have to maneuver around my car." "Well, that's very nice of you, but couldn't you have parked in front and had a guy simply move your car?" "A guy?" "Yeah, like a servant or something." JoJo pressed his lips together. "Well, my grandparents don't really have servants." "Oh, well, isn't that sweet? I'm always amazed at people who choose to live simply." He frowned, and she smiled as she followed him around the garage to the front of the house. "It's very pretty here," she allowed. "Thanks. I actually lived here for the first 4 years of my life while my dad was in college." "Really?" "Yes, it always feels like home to me." "Well, how did your mom feel about living with the in-laws?" she asked. He shook his head. "I never knew my mother. She passed away from brain cancer right after I was born." "Oh, I'm so sorry," Ella said as they went up the wide side of stairs that led to the red double front doors with the gold script written vertically. "What kind of writing is that?" she asked. "Well, currently it's Japanese." "Currently?" "Yes. My grandfather changes it over the years. It's been Chinese several times. That said stuff like, hold hands and grow old with you, and with love, water satisfies. Without love, food doesn't. Or something like that. It's been Korean that said, at the end of hardship comes happiness. And even monkeys fall from trees." "Interesting. And what does this one say?" He glanced up at the gold letters to make sure they hadn't been changed. "It says, man cannot serve two gods." She nodded as he opened the door and ushered her inside. Melody and Jordan immediately came from the kitchen to the front foyer, smiling prettily. "Hey," Jordan said immediately, "you must be Ella. I'm Jordan." She held her hand out to JoJo's friend. Ella smiled politely. "Hello, Jordan. Nice to meet you." She daintily shook Jordan's hand. JoJo nodded. "And this is Melody," he said. "Melody, this is Ella Penn." "It's nice to meet you," Melody said in her soft voice. "Nice to meet you," Ella said. "So you're the one dating Logan, right?" Melody nodded. "Right." Ella looked at Jordan. "And you're dating Eric Kino, right?" Jordan shook her head. "Nope, I'm not dating him. I'm engaged to him." "Oh, really? Well, how nice is that?" It was a rhetorical question, but Jordan giggled and answered anyway. It doesn't suck." JoJo chuckled. "So, hey, ladies, are the guys here yet?" "No, but they will be any minute," Melody answered. She smiled at Ella. "Let's head upstairs. We've been assigned to Miss Bree's old room to use to get ready." "Bree as in Brianna Adams?" Ella asked. "Yes." Ella looked at JoJo, "And Brianna Adams is actually your aunt, right?" He sighed. "Yes. She's my father's older sister." "That's very cool," she said brightly. Jordan's eyes narrowed. It was okay to be impressed by the royalty of this household. She could understand that, but she didn't miss JoJo's sigh, and she wondered if Ella was like another Angie. "I'll carry your things up for you," JoJo offered. "Nonsense," Jordan said quickly as she took the dress bag from him. "We got this. You go have a snack or something and get dressed yourself." He grinned. "Ma'am, yes, ma'am." The girls led the way up to Bree's old room, and when they went in, they watched as Ella walked slowly around the room, stopping to look out the glass doors to the deck and the ocean beyond. She turned and smiled. "Isn't this lovely?" Melody nodded. "It is." "It's not quite as fancy as I expected, though." "Really?" Jordan asked. Ella nodded. "I mean, my own bedroom has real gold accents, imported crystal chandeliers, and marble floors in the bathroom. I'm surprised by the simplicity here." Jordan couldn't help it. She rolled her eyes. "So, tell me about yourself, Ella. You met JoJo at school? She asked, as she took her own dress from hanging on the front of one of the closet doors and laid it on the large bed. She began to undress. Yes, we've ended up in the same English classes a few times over the past years. We're both seniors now, and of course, when the famous Heisman candidate asked me out, I had to say yes, though it's too bad he's out of the running now. Jordan frowned. It's too bad he got hurt, yeah. And is your family from here, or are you from out of state? Jordan asked. Ella's mouth dropped open. Oh, no, I'm not from out of state. My father is Hartwell Penn. Jordan wrinkled up her nose. I'm sorry, I guess I'm out of touch. So, who is Hartwell Penn? Should I know who that is? Ella made a gesture of distaste. My father is the founder and CEO of the Star Power marketing firm. Everyone who is anyone knows who he is and wants to be his friend. He owns and operates marketing firms around the world. If you want to be someone, if you're accepted by one of my father's companies, you'll be rich. He's a very important and influential man, and he can make you or break you with the snap of his fingers. Oh, well, that sounds dangerous, Jordan said with a smile. He is dangerous. Not many people are dumb enough to cross him. But if he likes you, you're as good as gold. I see, Jordan said as she laid out her dress. She turned to Melody. Mel, do you think I should change bras to the strapless? Melody smiled at Jordan's quick change of subject. Well, which is more comfortable? The strapless always makes me feel like it's falling down. Maybe I'll stick with the one I have on. She smiled at Ella. What do you think, Ella? She frowned. Well, how about no bra at all? I mean, your breasts aren't that big. No one will be able to tell that you're not wearing a bra unless you want to wear a padded one to give your breasts more substance. Jordan giggled at the veiled insult. Oh, I love the idea of going without. I think that's what I'll do. She took the black dress off the hanger and pulled it over her head. What do you think, Mel? Melody smiled and looked her over. The dress was tight, sparkly, and came to about mid-thigh. It had no sleeves, which is why Jordan had debated wearing a strapless bra. I think you look very sexy, and Ella is right. You can't tell you're not wearing a bra, but you can tell that you're an athlete. You look amazing. You're an athlete? Ella asked. Jordan tossed her hair back over her shoulder so she could get a better look at herself in the mirror. Yeah, I play softball at UCLA. Oh, I see. Well, that's nice. Isn't it, though? Jordan asked, her voice just on the edge of sarcasm. Melody pressed her lips together to keep from laughing as she busied herself getting into her dress. Ella looked around. It looks like you two brought overnight bags with you. Melody nodded as she slipped into her dress. Yes, we're going to come back here and stay the night because we're going to go with the Kinos tomorrow to cut down Christmas trees at a tree farm. Ella made a face. How sweet. She smiled, though, as she eyed Melody. Now that, Ella began, is a gorgeous dress, she said to Melody. Melody looked down at her cream-colored dress. It, too, was sparkly and tight and came to mid-thigh, but Melody's dress had little lace-capped sleeves and a square neckline, where Jordan's had more of a V neckline and showed a little more skin. Melody's dress was overlaid in sparkling lace. She smiled at Ella. Thank you. Mrs. Kino helped me pick it out. She didn't bother to tell her that she'd picked it out of Miss Shelley's own closet. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and Shelley Kino poked her head in. Hello, girls, Shelley said with a sweet smile. Oh, my goodness, don't you look beautiful in your dresses? She turned to Ella. Hello, you must be Ella. I'm Shelley Kino. It's so nice to meet you. Hello, Shelley. It's nice to meet you, too. Jordan's and Melody's mouths both opened in surprise at the casual way Ella addressed Mrs. Kino. Shelley only smiled. I've actually met your mother and father, Shelley went on. I didn't get to speak too much with your father, but your mom is a very nice lady. Thank you, Ella said shortly. Well, let's see your dress, Shelley said. No, she would have said, well, let's see your dress, Shelley said. Ella unzipped her dress bag and almost reverently took out the dress and laid it gently on the bed. Oh my, Shelley said, isn't that just a beautiful dress? It was a red dress that appeared to be trimmed in diamonds. It was strapless and had a plunging neckline, a tiny waist, and then spread out into a full skirt that looked like it was very short. Jordan wondered how she was going to be able to keep her underwear from showing. It's something, all right, Jordan quipped. Ella pulled the shoes out of the bottom of the dress bag. And these are the cherry on the bottom, she said with a sly smile. The girls all eyed the custom red satin heels with 3 straps laced together by a cord that would eventually tie around the ankle. Oh my, those are just lovely, Shelley said. She smiled. Well, the guys are all here and waiting very patiently. JoJo got dressed, and the 3 of them look so handsome, so let's get you girls done. You have about 45 minutes before the limo gets here. How are you wearing your hair? And that is the end of chapter 2. Oh, that Ella.